astrophysicist and author of Is There Life Out There, Jeff Swearing. Thank you for joining us.
Sandra, it's good to be here today.
We're going to be talking about a new Netflix series. It's actually a reboot of Lost in Space. Now, the original series, is that before your time, or did you watch it?
I've heard about it, but I've never actually seen the show itself.
Yeah,
so.
same. I think it's before my time. But with the new version, I've seen the first episode, and it's done really well, highly produced, great show so far. But one of the questions or the statements that a main character makes is that they've landed on this planet. It's not toxic. The atmosphere, the gravity, everything is Earth-like. And she calls it a Goldilocks planet. She says it's something that it's unlike anything that has been mapped before. Can you explain first, what is a Goldilocks planet?
Well, in Star Trek, that'd just be an M-class planet, But no, so a Goldilocks planet, I mean, if you remember the story of Goldilocks, Goldilocks comes into the bears, and the mom stuff is always to something, the dad stuff is to the other way, but the baby stuff was always just right. And so that's kind of really what it's referring to there, is that when you're looking at planets and their capacity to support life, the planet needs to be far enough away from the star, but not too far. Because if it's too cold, it's too hot, or it's too close, it's too hot. If it's too far away, it's too cold. And so that's what it's getting at. There's a lot of things about planets that are necessary for life. And to get it all just right makes it a Goldilocks planet.
Yeah, well, good. So then what she also says is that the odds of finding a planet like this, it's like winning the lottery. So what are the odds? How many exoplanets, we call them, or extrasolar planets, have been found, and what do they look like?
Well, as of right now, we found about 4,000 of them. I mean, it's a little bit less than that, but that's a remarkable number. I mean, when I was just starting graduate school, the number of exoplanets we'd found was 0.
Wow.
So, it really shows how the technology has developed, and our capacity to find planets outside our solar system has grown tremendously, because that's a difficult task. As of right now, there are a few planets that reside in that habitable zone that are roughly Earth size, and what they mean by habitable zone is one that's far enough away from the star that it's not going to evaporate all the water, but it's not so far away that all the water will have frozen out. And there's a lot of other things that play into that. But as of right now, none of the planets we found are we sure that they can actually host life, because you got to have the right you got to be obviously the right distance from the planet, or from the star, but it also matters what kind of atmosphere is there. In fact, the atmosphere is probably a bigger effect than the distance from the star in some sense. But you also need a planet that's large enough that it can hold water in its atmosphere, but not so large that it retains a lot of methane and ammonia, which would be kind of toxic to life.
Right.
So there's just a lot of things that play into there. And as of right now, we've not found any planet that clearly meets all the requirements like life or Earth does here. In fairness, we can't actually find our solar system if we're around another star. So there's a lot of room left to grow, but a lot of things indicate that the Earth's a pretty unique planet.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear that, one, it's unique, but also, two, that there's room to grow. So in that room to grow, sometimes there can be articles that say, an Earth-like planet has been found, and it can be exciting for people like me who love science fiction and science fantasy, but as a Christian, and for other Christians, it can kind of be scary too. How do we engage that, and what does that mean from our faith?
Well, the first thing, and one of the things that I realized that helped dispel almost all of that fear, is just a recognition that what God has revealed in Scripture, that as we go out and study His creation, we're never going to find anything that contradicts that, because God is a coherent God. So just to not worry about that, and where we seem like there's a conflict, that just means we need to go dig in deeper. And so where they say, oh, we found a habitable planet, well, you go and you start learning and say, what do we actually find? And it turns out that we don't know anything about the atmosphere or whether there's water on these planets. But just to kind of dig in and get past the sensational headline, to dig in and say, okay, what have we actually found? And what I have found when I have done that process is I have never found anything that the science has settled on and that is confirmed and really strongly supported that contradicts with what Scripture has to say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So if people want to learn more, then they can check out your book, Is There Life Out There?
That's a great place to go look.
Wonderful.
Lots of neat questions, lots of good stuff to explore.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Jeff.